everybody who's on the call. A very good afternoon to all the fellow members, students, and our panelists from India. A good evening to everyone out there in Australia, and a very good early and cold morning to everyone here out in London. I am CS Manish Timani. I'm currently serving as chairman of ICSI Overseas Center UK, and I really feel proud and pleased to be hosting this session today for all of our members and students and connecting our members across multiple countries and geographies. Let me start this session by introducing a very experienced and versatile group of people I have with me on the panel today. Starting with our first panelist, CS Joginder Sharma. Welcome, sir. He's a member of ICSI for last 20 plus years and also a fellow member of Governance Institute of Australia and Governance Institute UK. He's settled in Australia for 15 plus years now, working with banking and finance industry, managing compliance and governance function. He's currently working with Rabobank Australia. Thank you, Joginder sir, for being on our panel today and taking out time to share your experience and learning with us. Really looking forward to interact with you more.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Our second panelist for today is CS Arpit Jain. He is qualified CA and CS. He is currently working in finance leadership position at EasyTech Mobile Solutions India. In his career span of 13 plus years, he has worked for organizations like Vedanta, Wipro, and Infosys previously. And he is an established leader in finance, compliance, and governance. Thanks, Arpit, for your time today for the session, and looking forward to hear more about your experience and views.
Thank you.
And our third panelist for today is CS Gopal Sharma. He is also a qualified CA and currently working as a vice president in a leading investment bank in London. In his career span of 8 plus years, he has worked in multiple finance roles from multiple locations and has a very strong and growing career path so far. We will be looking to hear from him about his journey and some factors which has contributed to his success, throughout his journey so far. Welcome, Gopal, to the panel.
Thanks, Manish.
Let me now quickly go over to Delhi and invite CS Ashish Garg, past President ICSI and Chairman of International Affairs Committee. Ashish sir, over to you.
Thank you, Manish. Very good afternoon to all of you. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. It's really a pleasure to be the part of this first international webinar for the year 2022. Friends, proud moment for me as well, being a past president of the ICSI and the chairman of International Affairs Committee for 2021 and 2022. When we have started this journey in 2019 under the able leadership of Ranjit Pandey, then president, then we have thought of to start this overseas center. This process was going on since long, but the hit point when we have inaugurated first overseas center at Dubai, Middle East. Then the journey have started. UK, US, Australia, Singapore, and now Canada is on the way. So friends, 6 overseas centers in the span of 4 years. It's a great achievement for the ICSI, because whenever we are talking about the scope, profession, then always when I think you were in India, always you were thinking, what is the scope outside the world, outside the India? What we'll do? We are learning a Companies Act on Indian basis, LODR, SEBI provisions, filing of forms, these, that. But you are the real gem of the profession to showcase how a person, how a company secretary who have learned, read, and passed this course in India can do wonders across the world. Because I'm seeing Joginder, Manish, Arpit, Gopal, who has joined from Australia and UK. So now I'm telling to my company secretaries, my younger students who are in India, if you want to go abroad, opportunities are there. ICSI is always there to help you. We have the 6 overseas center. Doesn't mean that whenever you need any opportunity, you just call to Joginder or Manish, I'm coming to UK, I'm coming to Australia, what are the opportunities? But it's up to you how you prepare yourself, to go abroad, find out the opportunities, learn the things, what is the requirement of that country, upgrade yourself, update yourself, and then get connected with our overseas professionals and find out the opportunities, how you can do the wonders, and in the next stage, how you can help the other professionals who wanted to have their career outside the India. Friends, in this journey, I really compliment the president of 2022, CS Deven Deshpande, who will deliver his lecture and throw more lights about his plan, his actions for this year for the overseas opportunities. But first time we are organizing this first international overseas conference at Dubai on 23rd of March. And I'm expecting the same conference we'll do in UK, Australia, Singapore, and more countries where we have the overseas centers. So at least more people will join. More people will join not only from that country, but they will come from India and they will join hands with our overseas partners, our institutes, our overseas centers, and give the insight about the profession, how you can do the wonders. So friends, there are so many things, and I think such type of webinars we will do on a very regular intervals. I am requesting my overseas partners, Joginder, Arpit, Manish, to find out, Gopal, to more such professionals who can showcase, who can tell to our Indian company secretaries and the students that yes, these are the opportunities. And if I can do, you can also do. So there is a sky to the limit, and I'm very happy that presently more than 1,000 company secretaries are working abroad in various parts of the countries. 6 overseas centers are just the beginning. We have more miles to go. We have more such opportunities in the world. So thank you so much, and looking for more deliberations, and will be happy if you will support our company secretaries by way of mail, by way of your deliberations, to guide them in a better way to find the opportunities in such overseas places where they can also build your career. And today, if they are seeing you as a role model, then tomorrow they can become the role model for others. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Ashish, for your inspiring and kind words. I mean, to have 6 centers in 4 years is definitely a phenomenal journey. And as you rightly said, this is just the beginning. We have, miles to go from here on. So we are really happy to hear that. Can I please request CS Devendra Deshpande ji, now President ICSI, to address this group?
Thank you, Manish. Thanks a lot. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all the participants here and all the panelists. I must thank Joginder ji, Arpit ji, and Gopal ji for sparing their time for coming here and discussing with our members and students about journey from compliance to governance. So it's one of its kind webinar to start with. I think we used to do various webinars, maybe with CSIA or with some other authorities or agencies. But today, this is an Institute of Company Secretaries of India's program along with its overseas center. So it gives a sense of belongingness to all the members and students attending this. And I'm really happy to note that when I saw the flyer first, I was really happy to see all prefix CS before all the panelists and everyone whose name was included in the flyer. So I think this is a proud moment for each and every company secretary that one person from UK, one person from Australia, 2 persons from UK, one from Australia, others from India are joining together and having a discussion on compliance to governance. So I think this is a good start of the year, and I must thank all the participants, also those who are connected online, so that they would understand what is the situation abroad. As rightly said by Ashish ji, our past president, that there are a lot of opportunities abroad. I was going through one newsletter. I think Joginder ji would be able to give an insight about it. Australian newsletter wherein it said that there is a scarcity of corporate governance professionals in Australia. I think there was a newsletter which I was going through. So there is a lot of opportunity, and even Institute has its own placement portal wherein we have now started overseas opportunity link. So whenever there is an overseas opportunity for the company secretaries in India, they will be able to register themselves there and they can get those opportunities. So in these connection also, we all can work together and help our budding company secretaries, new company secretaries to enter into the global area and beyond the boundaries. About the topic today, let me tell you that it's a very different topic altogether, wherein we are talking about compliance to governance. We all have gone through what is compliance and what is governance, but I always feel that compliance is a cost. And when we talk about governance, governance is a value. So this is a statement which proves everything, because with ESG thing coming in everywhere, and ESG compliant companies getting more value than non-ESG companies, I think governance is going to play a vital role in developing the economy. So I think this discussion during next 1.5 hours or 2 hours will definitely give insights to all the members and students present, that how to look at a particular thing. Don't look at the things just as a compliance, but give a thought to that compliance, that how it is adding to the governance. So I think this journey, which we have seen as company secretaries in India, and the views of the people who are working abroad, will definitely help all the participants. So all the best to everyone, and I hope that you will have a wonderful time. Over to you, Manish, and I think it will be a wonderful session. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Devendraji, for your kind words. Again, I can't agree more from my own personal experience as well, that the kind of skills we have in company secretaries and the kind of skills required internationally are a perfect match. And there are more and more opportunities for all of us to explore, not only in India, outside India as well. So let me now go back to our panelists, and we'll start the sessions by asking them some Q&As. For all the audience on the call, you can submit your questions through the chat and comment section, and we will try and pick them up as we go through in the session. So let me start with Jogendra ji. Sir, the first question I have for you is, looking back at your long and successful career, you have worked in quite a few areas of compliance and governance. During that experience, how have you seen the profession has evolved so far, and how do you see it growing further in, say, next 5 to 10 years?
Thanks, Manish. Thanks everyone on the call and providing me this opportunity to share my experiences with you all. From compliance to governance, it's an interesting topic. And so being a company secretary, when I go back and recall when we were studying, we saw that Institute has given us a good understanding theoretically of the various legislative and regulatory requirements as part of our course content, which span across from corporate law to economic laws to foreign currencies laws. So what that has given us is, that has given us a skill where we can work into any kind of sector, understand what that company is doing, and based on that, we are able to identify what are the business activities of that company, and based on those business activities, what the rules and regulations we need to comply with. And as a company secretary, yes, key aspect of a company secretary role is to basically advise the chairman, advise the board of directors, help into the corporate governance aspect. But that's just one aspect. We have got skills where we can leverage them into working into risk management functions. In industry, especially be it manufacturing industry, be it financial industry or technical industry, you have to know how to manage risk. And as a company secretary, we are the best people to help understand what those risks are, because we understand how a company has evolved from inception to where it is now. And based on the nature of the activities, what are the various risks company may have, because there may be national regulations company has to comply with. There would be state jurisdictions with which we have to comply with. And if company is into like working in overseas jurisdictions, then you also have to understand what those overseas jurisdiction requirements are. So what I'm trying to say is, don't consider yourself as purely a company secretary. You are an administrative officer, you are a governance officer, you are a compliance officer, you are a board secretary, you are an admin officer. So whatever you need to support your company grow and provide that transparency and openness, help company grow, be it corporate governance, be it ESG sector, be it corporate sustainability, you have a role to play there. And in addition to that, especially like in India, we are bundled in a way that you have to do either company secretary course and then you have to do either law or accounting. It doesn't really matter, because the skills which we get in each of these professions, be it CS, CA or CWA, you basically understand why a corporate institution has been set up and how that that institute need to be run. Once you appreciate that, then you understand there would be different facets of that sector. There would be some finance department, there would be some admin department, there would be some HR department, there would be some compliance department, and so on and so forth. Idea is, where is your interest, where your interest lies, and based on that you should be able to harness that interest by going in depth into the company's activity, understanding the regulatory aspects related to the business activity, and then applying your skills which you gained as a company secretary student and as part of your internship, how you go about that. Idea is, or the key is, transparency. We all know how to write a paper. We all know how to scrutinize a paper. And that's the key aspect which you can leverage and use in any field you want to work for. In terms of, so for me, just to give you some better context, I started my career with PVR Cinemas back in India, and then I worked with Nirula's. So PVR was into a cinema exhibition and production, so it was a collaboration with Village Roadshow Limited of Australia. And I worked there for 3-4 years. And then I moved to Nirula's. Nirula's was into hospitality industry. So they have food manufacturing, restaurant, and hotels. And then I moved to Jaipuria's. They were in the franchises of Pepsi, so into bottling plants. So what I'm trying to say is service manufacturing. And then I moved to Australia. I was sponsored as a company secretary based on my visa. And I started into banking industry. Yes, when you come to a new country, we have to uplift our understanding, our skills, our knowledge before you get into a role. So there would be, you might have to take a step back, but that doesn't mean that you have lost anything. It is just, you are trying to stand yourself up to understand what is it that is applicable to that organization. How can you help that organization? What skills you can bring in? And as a company secretary, I can share that when I was working as a customer service consultant as well in a financial industry, I knew more than what my peers were based on my experience, which I gained from India as a company secretary and legal officer. What that gives is, that gives you an advantage, because then you are able to excel and help your management understand you can do more than where you are. What that means is that builds a very good network for you, that builds a very good reference for you. And it's all about the meritocracy. If you know your stuff and you've got the skills, you will get that. It's just a matter of time. And that's where each organization would have some sort of development plan where they would support you in those development plans. And you can work through that plans. And internally, I moved from a customer service consultant role to a compliance officer role within 2-3 years. And since then, I've been working in compliance function where I've never worked in the banking industry, but I'm leading a compliance function of my bank for my business area and supporting them in end-to-end product management. How do we distribute our products across various channels? What are the compliance requirements? How do we ensure we do the right thing by the customer? And as a company secretary, that's the first thing we learn, how to do right thing by the company. Because a company secretary is there when a company is incorporated, and a company secretary is there when a company is being wound up or going through the merger, acquisition, or growth. So we play a pivotal role. And that's the key strength for us being a company secretary. And I would say, just don't restrict yourself to looking for a company secretary roles. Because even from being a company secretary in foreign jurisdictions, in India, we are more basically focused into either legal, finance, accounting, or company secretarial. But in overseas jurisdiction, you can look for risk management, you can look for compliance management, you can look for governance role, you can look for internal controls, internal audit. So sky's the limit, as Ashish initially suggested. It's just, you need to know what your skills are, where you need to be, and you work towards that. I hope that gives you some context, and I have not taken much time there, but happy to take any questions as we progress through the discussion. Thanks, Manish. Over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Jogendraji. And, very useful insight in terms of, yes, I mean, company secretaries are there when a company is formed, and company secretaries are there when a company is liquidated. So, very rightly said that we kind of support companies throughout their life journey. And I also can't agree more to your statement that, we have a lot to gain, not only in the sector of compliance, but even outside compliance. So with that, let me move on to my next question. And coming over to you, Gopal, I think one of the key questions I keep getting is around technology. As we all know that technology is taking over all our workspaces. Corporate are switching to digital ecosystems nowadays. How will this radical shift in the working habit of professionals as well as organization will impact company secretaries? How can we prepare ourselves for such a complexity coming up? Gopal, I think you are on mute. If you can unmute yourself.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
Thanks, Manish. So as I was saying, technology is something that is evolving every day. And I think all working professionals, not just restricting ourselves to corporates, but even practitioners for that matter, need to either run its space and not the other way around. If I have to break the question down into one of the words that you mentioned, which was digital ecosystems. So now in simple parlance, if I have to explain that, what it means is that all the tools that one requires for him or her to do their job, be Microsoft Word, Microsoft Excel, or even the softwares that you need for filing any company returns, all of that is covered under the word digital ecosystems. So the one thing that all of you would notice that has changed over the past 10 years or so is that the number of physical returns that we were filing earlier have been drastically reduced now, and most of them are being filed online. So that is again one of the things which has evolved with technology, and we have, as working professionals, kind of walked hand in hand with that changing technology. If we take even the current work environment for that matter, wherein because of COVID, we were not able to work in office physically, and if we look at it in the current context, now we can work online because we are able to perform the same set of functions independently, completely online, even though we're sitting in a completely different location. And all of that has been made possible by the right use of technology. Even this webinar, for example, if you look at it, earlier seminars were conducted only in person, but now we are having this webinar online wherein people are sitting in different locations. So all of this change again has been possible because we have adapted seamlessly to a certain extent, even excelled now for I would say. And all of that had been made possible only because we have been walking hand in hand with the changing technology that we're seeing. So even though some of these shifts by prima facie appear radical, every professional to a certain extent has naturally prepared himself or herself to these changing amends. And if for whatever reason, if you feel that you are maybe lagging behind a bit with the changing technology, there are a lot of online courses that are available to teach us everything. So I would probably say that if we have to prepare ourselves for the changing technology, we do have the right tools available to us. Some of these tools are again in the technological form which has been changing with time. That's probably my key takeaway. Manish, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Gopal. And again, I mean, technology is pretty much everywhere, as you rightly said, and there is equally a lot out there which can help us to kind of be the front runner when it comes to technology. We, as a company secretary, professional, should be front running any technology changes. And you also touched upon the scenarios related to COVID, and that very well links into my next question, which I have for you, Arpit, is around that COVID-19 has been a challenging time for everyone, without a doubt, and it sure will impact the way we work in future, even when the world is out of COVID. Would you like to share the challenges various professionals, more specifically company secretaries, had to face during these trying times? From your own experience, what is the expectation of industry from us, and what should we do in order to keep pace with the regulatory and market dynamics on this?
Sure, Manish. First of all, thank you so much for having me here. It's indeed a privilege to be sharing my views on this platform. COVID hit us all of a sudden, and no business continuity planning in any organization factored for this kind of event. This is unforeseen event, and no kind of planning could have helped us. Whatever happened, it was all a sudden response to the kind of events we were facing. So when COVID hit us, it's like there was a significant impact across the organization in terms of, let's say, whatever assessment proceedings which were going on before tax authorities, all of them were put on hold all of a sudden. In our organization, ERP implementation was going on, which requires a lot of deliberations with the stakeholders within the organization as well as the implementation partners, and that also took a beating. When my team members moved back to their remote villages, having connectivity issues, then that also impacted the deliverables to a certain extent. There were junior team members in my team who required a lot of hand-holding to scale up and start delivering. When you are working in a physical environment, the person can reach out to the senior sitting just next cubicle and get the guidance. And that helps a lot. Reaching out the seniors over the call is always a bit of challenge. But all of us had no choice but to adapt to remote working. In fact, we even planned for physical custody of items like, say, digital signature tokens, checkbooks, or say even printer. We managed to transport one printer to the office residence of to the residence of one of the employees, so that if any printing is required of any official document, that can be taken care of seamlessly, and we are not depending upon any outside assistance. So yes, there were a lot of challenges, and the journey has been nothing sort of a very full of up and downs. But gradually, things started falling in place. Microsoft Team meetings became just a part of our lives, and we had no choice. Gradually, the IT infrastructure was put in place for all the team members. They were given assistance to set up laptops, VPNs, internet connectivity at their homes, so that the work doesn't suffer. And the regulatory authorities also helped us by extending the timelines for filing various returns. ROC allowed us to hold board meetings, even for considering the financial statement virtually. AGMs were allowed to be held virtually. And in this entire process, all of us got used to remote working. It has become part of our lives now. And going forward also, I see that in the next couple of months, at least, it's going to be a hybrid work culture. And we have to be on top of the technical tools so that we are able to deliver on the office responsibilities much more efficiently and with productivity. That's my take on the overall COVID scenario.
Okay, thank you, Arpit, for your views. As it is said, there is always an opportunity in disaster. And that's how, you kind of explained the COVID scenario also, that has been a disaster for, everybody across the world without a doubt. But there is an opportunity in it also. And if, as a company secretary professional, we kind of identify that opportunity and front run that, I think we have, more and more to gain. You also touched upon a lot of aspects about communications, and that's where I'm getting my next question. If I can put that question to you, Gopal, if that's fine. The question I have is, clearly communication is turning out to be one of the important skill set that contributes to our success as company secretary, or, for as any other professional for that matter. What role did communication play in your journey from being a CS student to working in a leading investment bank as a vice president? Any key takeaways to share with our audience today?
Thanks, Manish. So communication, again, is a very wide topic. And in fact, sometimes the single most important factor in the success, or even at times failure, of any working professional. So, the way I think of it is probably as a student, when you write exams, you tend to communicate with your examiner the learning that you have accumulated over time, or even when you sit for a job interview for that matter. Once you qualify your exams, you are a part of, say, a group discussion. You're trying to communicate your thoughts better than the other people in the room through your verbal language or your body language. So good communication skills definitely is something that you would need to start your professional journey. This is something that I would say to a certain extent is inculcated in you since even a child, right? You start communicating since the day you're born. So if I have to probably look at the post-qualification experience that I have accumulated as an example, what I've noticed over time is that how the communication styles tend to differ depending upon the audience that you're interacting with as well. For example, when you're interacting with, say, very senior people in the bank, you tend to need not give every small detail to them, but need to follow the macro picture, because that's the bit that they're most interested in. So the mantra less is more is, I think, something which works or applies a lot better when you're interacting with them. But I think likewise, when you're dealing with, say, your colleagues, you can speak in a lot more detailed manner. You can cover the specific topics that you're covering around governance, around compliance in a lot more detailed way, and they would be able to understand and appreciate that a lot better than say maybe the interaction that you have with seniors. So I think it's important that you switch gears according to the audience that you're interacting with. Another aspect which I think maybe students and budding professionals tend to maybe struggle a bit around communication in particular is how we communicate messages via presentations. I think there as well, if we apply the basic principles around, knowing your audience, making sure the language that you're using to communicate is very clear, and to a certain extent, there is a flow to your presentation, I think you always tend to land the right communication according to your audience if you follow these basic principles. I think this is something that I would say that I have learned over the past 8 years or so in my professional journey. Thanks, Manish.
Okay, thanks, Gopal, and appreciate all your insight into this. I mean, very rightly said. We can't really drive our car in the same gear, on different roads. So similarly, we can't have the same style of communication with everybody. So that's a good takeaway for me as well. And as communication is obviously a good topic, and I have more questions, and I'll probably go back to some of the communication question as well. But for my next question, I'll go back to Jogendraji. Sir, I mean, another question that I'm getting is more about opportunities available outside India. So do you see opportunities for company secretary professionals converging in different jurisdiction, given that institute has collaborated now with many professional bodies across the globe, in fact? And if you could share that, how the cooperation between national and international bodies in view of new trends and challenges is impacting company secretaries, and what sort of new opportunities it is creating for them?
Sure. So in terms of the opportunity, definitely there are opportunities for any professional across the globe. Now, globe is a village, and technology has helped us in that we can basically be sitting in India and servicing clients in any corner of the world. It's more about what you are bringing on to the table, what skills you can add to the organization, what value can you add to the organization. That is what is more material than what your qualifications are, if that makes sense. In today's days, and qualifications are just a gateway to get into the first door into the industry. It's more about building that network. And as Gopal has rightly pointed out, communication is the key. If you know how to communicate, that means you know how to network. So to me, building your network, understanding, appreciating the environment where you need to go, and doing your research is the first key step to understand how to go about it, and then go for it. Because, say, for example, and I also saw a question around somebody mentioning that they are looking at Australian compliances and how can they need a certification. To me, we need to get away from this mindset of certifying ourselves for different qualifications. Qualification is just on paper. It is more what skills you are going to add, what value you are going to add to the organization, and how can you adapt, what resilience you can bring in to that role is the key in today's day and ages. So change is the only constant. So what we have studied 5 years ago as a company secretary is no longer valid 5 years from here. How do we adapt to that change? That's the key. So yes, in terms of jurisdiction, given there is now a much mature, I would say, collaboration amongst various institutes across different jurisdictions by ICSI, that has clearly helped recognize us as sound professionals who can add value to the organizations, and the skills we bring are unmatchable in that sense. And we are hardworking as well. So be it Australia, UK, Canada, New Zealand, Singapore, CS qualification is now recognized informally. So, and other thing is that similar to how Australia and India has got mandatory requirements for certain companies to have a company secretary, such mandatory requirements are not there in the corporate law under other jurisdictions. So if that's the case, that means you have got more competition as well. And that's where, if you know how to communicate, how to adapt, and you have got skills which are required for today's age, there is no bar for you to seek jobs in overseas jurisdictions as well. But of course, you'll have to go through some hoops, as in for moving to any country, you need to understand that there would be some visa requirements. Do you hold a valid visa, or do you qualify to get a visa? And that based on each and everybody's individual circumstances also, because there are a lot of pathways to go to overseas jurisdictions. You can go there as a permanent resident, you go there as a temporary resident, or you can be sponsored by the employer to work for them. And that way, from there, if you like, you can progress towards other aspects as well. So it's knowing about where you want to go, what are the legal requirements of going to that place, and how you can pass through those requirements. Either you are able to get a job from India, then that's the best part. If not, then you need to be aware of that. If you land somewhere else, similar to how we move from one state to another state, we have to start from scratch sometimes. You just have to establish yourself, and then you will be up and running soon. So opportunities are definitely there. It's just a matter of how we basically identify those and leverage those for our own benefit. Over to you, Manish.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Jogendraji. And you rightly touched upon quite a few aspects here. One you talked about, obviously, we need to be proactive ourselves in order to find an opportunity outside. But there are ample opportunities out there, and Institute's collaboration with other international body is only increasing it day by day. You also very nicely touched upon, the aspects related to change. That change is the only constant thing, and that's where I probably would like to have some more views. Arpit, if I can come over to you on that, because that's nicely tied into another question I am getting from the audience is around change and how do we keep ourselves updated. So obviously, being aware of what's going around us is really key for a successful profession, and something that can give us an edge, as Jogendraji was also saying. But the problem is, there is so much information out there in today's time that it becomes really challenging to filter the relevant information and keep yourself up to date on what's going on around you. And we have to do that for a lot of things, like for finance, compliance, and governance. So how do you deal with this situation, and how do you make sure that you have good understanding of what's happening around you in multiple different fields?
Yeah, Manish, very relevant question. Considering the fact that we are supposed to be managing the responsibilities across various disciplines, it becomes very important for us to update ourselves across all these disciplines as to what's happening. But we have to sometimes draw a line, because we are living in an age of information overload. But there's a limit to the kind of cognitive capacity we have as humans to process the information that is coming our way. So one principle that I follow is that I'm going to keep a watch across all these disciplines, whatever is happening, but I will pick up the topic for in-depth analysis, which is going to have some direct or indirect impact in my role and responsibilities which I'm managing currently. So that way, I know that, okay, what's happening around in general, but in depth, I will pick up only the topics which are going to have some bearing on my current roles and responsibilities. Apart from the topic that we are supposed to update ourselves, like say, I'll give you an example. If some accounting authorities issuing IFRS, say on lease accounting, as well as say on agriculture or insurance contract, then probably I will choose to pick lease accounting IFRS for in-depth study, because The aspect of lease accounting I'm handling in my current role. Rest of the items, maybe I will pick up when I have the requirement. So this is how I segregate the topics on which I will try to update myself in depth. And then we have to be careful about the kind of sources that we are depending upon. Recently, our budget was presented in the parliament by Honorable Finance Minister, and we kept on receiving too many mails from multiple sources about the highlights of the budget. So you have to be very choosy about the kind of sources you are picking up to update yourself about a particular happening in the outside world. So the kind of decision I have taken is like, say for takes related update, I will refer to compilations published by, say, one of the big four. So that way it makes your life easy. And one more thing I follow is I allocate some time on regular basis, say 2 hours every weekend, to make sure that I'm updating myself about the relevant topics. It is about all these disciplines like, say, taxation, accounting, compliances, and also about what is happening in the industry in which I'm working. So this is how I balance. Over to you, Manish.
Yeah, thank you, Arpit. And this is probably a constant struggle we all have, to in today's world to deal with the information overload. And I think the points you have given, I'm hoping that will definitely benefit the audience in the call. With my next question, I'll go to Gopal again. Gopal, something that we actually did touch upon in this session earlier, and Jogenderji also touched upon that. For company secretaries, there is ample opportunity even outside the core compliance and governance area. So, company secretaries today are rendering professional services beyond their core compliance domain. What advice would you like to give to your young aspiring members and students so that they can become the global profession of tomorrow, which is obviously, have an expertise in compliance, but not limited to compliance and governance only?
Thanks, Manish. So I think the one thing that I say I would have learned in the past 8 years of experience that I have is that there are two main things which kind of determine whether you're a successful professional or not. So one is the professional acumen side of it, which you acquire as a part of the degree that you pursue as a career option, how you apply that acumen in a professional capacity. The other thing which I think is also equally important is your own interpersonal skills and how you essentially do the job that you're kind of tasked to do. Very simply put, I think any job is essentially dealing with people. So if you are, for that matter, good with people, that's like half job, half done, as far as I see it. As regards whether people choose a core compliance domain or venture out and do something totally different, I would probably say it's a matter of personal choice. I mean, if, for example, if I look at in this panel itself, we have 3 company secretaries. One is a person, Yugendraji, who has excelled in compliance. Arpit is a finance lead, and I myself work in treasury. So I think nobody can tell you what the right door is. It's probably up to you what door you want to take. As Yogendraji kind of touched upon in his answer as well initially in the session, there are opportunities outside of compliance in areas like model risk or areas like even climate, for that matter, which is a very hot topic in recent terms. So I think there are definitely avenues for company secretaries to explore. If I look at it from the syllabus perspective, our company secretary syllabus is not just restricted, to compliance. So there is areas which you could pursue in the law side. There is accounts that you touch upon. There is tax that you touch upon. So I think it does provide us the right platform, which you can definitely explore further. But I think the most important thing that would help you excel as a professional, and which I think to a certain extent would determine the right field, whether you're in the right field or not, is that whether you enjoy whatever you're doing on a day-to-day basis. So I think that would really help you excel as a professional. And as it is said, then work would be in some sense fun for you. So that would be something that I would really advise to, any young students who are looking for what the right career path is for them. Over to you, Manish.
Thank you, Gopal. And again, something I would like to vouch from my personal experience as well. Like, CS course is so wide and gives you expertise in so many areas. And looking internationally and nationally, there are so many opportunities out there. It's only for us to grab those opportunities, only for us to decide which area we want to grow in our career, and then go and grow up those opportunities. And I will also like to link it to what Jogenderji said earlier, that you can also shift from one profile to another profile during your career as you learn more about different sort of roles. You kind of understand a bit more on what needs to be done, and there is an opportunity for you to move from one to another role. I'm also now starting to pick up some of the questions online, which has been submitted by the audience. So one question that I'm getting, Jogendraji, over to you for that is around risk management. So you did touch upon in one of your answers that risk management is probably a very wide area where company secretaries can contribute more. Can you probably elaborate a bit more on that for the audience, that what we mean by risk management, what sort of roles and opportunity might be there for company secretaries there, and what as a professional we need to do to grab those opportunities?
Sure. So as I said, when I moved from India to Australia, everything was new to me. I had to start from scratch, and that's where the study we did as a company secretary gives us exposure to different remits of law, and that helps us understand what is it, the area which I like, and then I can grow for that. And in terms of risk management, so risk management is quite a broad term. Compliance is part of risk management. So we broadly think everything we do in our day-to-day has got a risk attached to it, unless we have a control to mitigate that risk. Say, for example, we are driving a car on a high speed, we have got brakes. So brake helps us as a control to control the speed of the car. So risk is we may hit someone if we are not having brakes. So risk management in every field. As a compliance profession, when we say ourselves as compliance is just a generic term we use. But compliance has got different facets to it. And compliance is part of risk management. So risk management is a broad term, and compliance is one component of it. Then there are, as Gopal also alluded to earlier, model risk, credit risk, depends on your interest as well. Then there is operational risk. Then there is technology risk. Because every day, as I said, change is the constant. There is accounting and financial risk as well. There is climate risk. There is finance risk. It depends on which area you want to grow into based on your skills, your interest, and availability of the jobs as well. Because interest is not going to help you if there are no jobs available as well. And then we need to be aware of what are the emerging risks in the market based on the industry and based on your interest as well. So like, for example, in the banking and finance industry, risk management is a broad term. So we are regulated prudentially, and as part of that, we have to comply with certain aspects. When we onboard third parties to provide certain services, that's a vendor risk. When we onboard our clients and we have to go through the checks of, say, for example, identifying the client, who the client, know your client. So that's an AML risk. When we have to have controls to ensure that when we make payments, say, for example, using Paytm, controls into it to now climate change is a big issue, an emerging risk. So climate risk is another one. Sustainability, compliance risk. Then within an organization, there would be an enterprise risk team, and then there would be a business risk as well. So it has got many facets. It depends on where interest lies. And it's very hard to put it into a single bucket. Similarly, if you're not in a banking and finance industry, if you're in IT industry as an example, they have a risk of where staff attrition is there, HR risk. The market changes, new technology comes in, so technology risk is there. So every industry or every business has got its own risk. Even at our homes, in our day-to-day life, we face so many risks. And we do risk management on a day-to-day basis in our lives as well. It's just understanding that concept and applying to the area you want to explore and go into. And as Arpit suggested, once you know where you need to go, you just do some in-depth analysis. You do some more research, do analyze that. Is it something of interest to you? How do you then build that network? Who do you connect to get there? So and as I said, qualification is just a first step into the door. Main thing is, as Gopal alluded earlier, your communication skills. How do you build your communication to interact with people at different levels? And that would help you network. And by networking and then by seeking mentorships based on your area of interest, approach somebody who's already working in that area. And that person would be able to guide you how you can uplift yourself to meet the requirements expected of the area or the role you want to move into. And we have to do that on an ongoing basis. We have to adapt to the things as they progress. Because if I'm a newly qualified person, my main aim is to get into a job market. That's where I'll try to apply or connect to the people who can help me get a foot into the door. But once I'm to the role, then my role would be to grow into the next role. Then question would be, then how do you get there? I may have a conversation with my people leader. They would be able to help me understand, yeah, I'm happy to help you, develop you. And they may provide me some secondment opportunity to help me understand what that looks like to work into the role or the area where my interest lies. Maybe I just have heard it, but when I face it, I don't like it. But that's not the end of the road. You always have the opportunity to move into some other area as well. So you need to know yourself, what your future objectives are, what is it really which makes you feel happy, what you really enjoy doing as part of the job, and simultaneously paying your bills. And that's where you need to understand whether you are doing job to pay your bills or you are doing jobs to pay your bill as well as enjoying the role. And once you know that, then it makes it easier for you to go about that. So I have elaborated more on in a general sense, but as I said, risk management is key to every organization in every business area. It depends upon what and where you want to go for. And there are like multiple fields within risk management, dependent upon the nature of the industry. Even government has got risk. They've got sovereign risk attached to it as well, macroprudential risk. So it depends on where you want to go. So risk is a very loosely used term, but it gets its specific meaning based on what your interest lies and which area you are looking for. I hope that answers the question. Over to you, Manish.
That does answer the question. I can share a quick piece of information also, just to add to what you said with the group, that CGI, which is elsewhere known as ICSA, and ICSI have now memorandum of understanding, and members of the ICSI can now study with CGI divisions of their choices, subject to obviously the residency requirement in the relevant country. And ICI members just need to appear in 3 exams in order to qualify for the other kind of ICSI or other requirements. So that's the power of ICSI collaborating with other international bodies, and that leads very well to what Joginder ji you mentioned, that are you only doing the jobs to pay your bill, or are you actually enjoying what you do? So it's on us to figure out what we really enjoy doing, and then our institute and the curriculum that CS offers will obviously help us to get there. And that also leads me to the next question, where I want more thoughts, Arpit, probably from you, is everybody so far has been saying that there are opportunities available for CS students outside core compliance also. To Joginder ji's point, there are international opportunities available as well. But the core question from a student or a young member would be, how do I go get those opportunities? So with the role of company secretaries now evolving from compliance to governance, we are saying the need for a skilled professional has gone manifold. So rather than just a compliance professional, we are talking about a skilled professional. So how do you think that company secretaries should equip themselves to match the requirements of the industry, where we are being hired to do the job of other skill set also? Like, what else we could do in addition to just focusing on our core curriculum?
Very good question, Manish. There's no doubt that our role of a company secretary has evolved over the last couple of decades. We are no longer being perceived as a compliance gatekeeper. Now we are being accepted as a trusted advisor to the board of directors, and also as a critical link between the board of directors and other business stakeholders at large. we are being expected to work with various functions in the organization to put practices and processes in place to ensure the business of organization is being run in a way which serves the interest of all the stakeholders at large. So in this process, the CS will be working with, say, various departments in the organization, sometimes say with HR, to ensure that a proper code of conduct for employees is existing in the organization. Maybe sometimes to put a robust whistleblower policy in the organization so as to ensure that there is a forum for stakeholders to raise alarm in case something is going wrong. Maybe sometimes you have to work with even procurement team to make sure that the purchase policy is transparent and there is not much of a scope for unethical transactions. So definitely the role that CS is expected to play now, it has increased, it has expanded many folds. Coming to the specific qualities, the skills which can help members of the profession to occupy this kind of role in any organization, I think there are 3 points. First and foremost, since we are business enablers, so we must know the business dynamics, the nuances of the business environment in which we are operating. Because you are going to work with multiple functions in the business, so you should know how to advise them on different aspects that you can do when you have a reasonable clarity of the business dynamics. Otherwise, your advice may sound very theoretical and the business may not accept this kind of advice. The next thing I can think of is communication and interpersonal skills, about which Gopal talked at length. Since you have to, you are supposed to work in a collaborative mode with various teams within and outside the organization. So importance of this skill cannot be undermined. And then the last thing I can think of is you have to keep your eyes and ears open to know what's happening in the governance world at large. It's not only about the best practices which are being adopted across organizations across the globe, but also what wrong is going so far as the corporate governance is concerned. If you know about these things, like say what went wrong with X company because of such and such reason, maybe you can learn from the mistakes and take corrective action in your organization also. So that's my take on your question, Manish. Over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Arpit, for the insights. And again, the more we do in this probably is less, in the sense the more skill sets we kind of equip ourselves with. This is obviously better for us as a professional. Another interesting question and slightly different, the paper we have been discussing so far, I'm getting is around, the climate change. And Jogenderji, if I can come to you with that question, that how company secretaries currently play a role in climate change. And obviously climate change is something which is going to become more and more important in coming years. So how company secretaries can play a role in the climate change field, linking it either with the compliance and governance related to climate, or even more widely?
I would go to the fundamental requirement for us as a company secretary. We act as an advisor to the board. And board's role is to drive the strategy of the organization for its success. And climate is change is an emerging risk. It needs to be factored into any company's board strategy to grow. How the company is going to stay afloat in spite of the impacts of the climate change. How is it going to hit their bottom line? So for that, as a company secretary, it is really pertinent for us to understand what are the risks because of the climate change my company may face. How is it going to impact my bottom line? What should we change in our business priorities? What changes should we bring in terms of onboarding our clients? What changes should we bring in our technology usage? What changes should we bring into our third-party service providers? It all relates to climate. So climate would be a factor in any industry in one shape or other. So when we talk about climate risk, that's what it is. Then you can really understand what is happening at the global level. So there is a World Economic Forum where there is a lot of focus on climate change. So try to read through what's happening there. Try to understand which country is doing what to help them go through that aspect. There is a lot of talk about carbon pricing as an example. What does that mean? And if you understand those concepts, you would be able to provide more pragmatic advice to your board of directors to help them make right decisions at right time to gear up the company to meet those challenges. I hope this answers the questions. Manish, over to you.
This very well answers the question, sir, and thanks for your inputs and thoughts around there. Another question I'm just picking up, from the chat and from the question submitted by audience is around again going back to the same skills point or competencies point. We obviously touched upon during the session that we need to learn other skills and we need to be looking out for more opportunities than just outside compliance. So Gopal, if I can come back with this question again, or more an extension of a question which we already asked previously in the session, is when we talk about other competencies, other skill set, what are some of the key skill set you feel as a professional help us to grow and have success in our career? Obviously, as a compliance professional, but generally also, what are some key or common skill set which an MNC would be expecting from any professional, let it be compliance or other professionals? And how do a company secretary, student, or member can gain an edge on those skill sets?
Thanks, Manish. So I think one thing that anyone should actively pursue, even as a student or even post qualification, is inculcate in yourself a habit of reading. The reading could be probably any topics that you personally want to pursue because of interest, or it might be something that would help you in your professional capacity. But I think reading is something that I think actively, if you pursue maybe for an hour or two every day, is something that would help you in both your personal as well as professional front. It could be topics that which are upcoming, as Yogendraji and Arpit mentioned, in the field that you're working in as a company secretary. So it might help you from a professional capacity on being up to date with your other professionals that you're working with, or it could be something that you just personally want to pursue down the line, or you have probably set out a professional right path for yourself. It might help you maybe achieve that right path. I think if I give personally an example that I am doing as a part of one of the 2022 objectives that I've set out for myself, is I would probably maybe endeavor into coding. So that is something that I am trying to do parallelly with my professional work that I'm doing with the bank that I'm working in. So again, there is a bunch of stuff which is available online on coding. You have free courses from Google which you could pursue on Python, and it is one of the topics which is very much upcoming in the market. So if you have maybe coding abilities, you have a very niche skill set, I would say, in combination with the professional capacity that you have as a working professional. So I think if you have maybe combinations like these, which you can identify and maybe develop in parallel with whatever you're doing in a professional capacity, then it might help you give an edge over whatever people you're working in, and help you excel in the fields that you have. Over to you, Manish.
Okay, thank you, Gopal. And again, from my own personal experience, getting more into IT, which we touched upon in the past, getting to know about some of these, upcoming languages is always helpful. Not necessarily a part of your job, but it's always, more as good to have things. Obviously, encourage everybody to potentially start venturing into it. As I said, it's not a mandatory thing, but it's always more a good to have thing. Just looking at the questions being submitted online again, and a very popular theme continues to be around the job opportunities outside India or internationally. If I can come to you, Yogendraji, with that theme again, I know we kind of touched upon in this and various questions and answers already so far, but more specifically, can you throw some of the profiles or areas as you touched upon on the risk management? What else could be the broad areas where CS can explore opportunities outside. And if you can probably also, throw some light that how we as a company secretary bring on the table, as you know, a unique ability or unique skill set which MNCs are looking for. So yeah, just to summarize the question, what are the areas where we can explore more opportunities, and what we bring as a USP on the table being company secretary that companies are looking for?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Manish. So what we can bring on the table as USP being a company secretary, I think company secretary's role is a very pivotal role. We act as a conduit between the board and the management. We act as a conduit between the board and the shareholders. So what I'm trying to say is we are the best coordinators in an organization and working with different type of stakeholders. So stakeholder management becomes key for us because we have to make sure that we are giving the right information to our board, and we are also giving the right information to our management so that right information can be reported to the board to make right decisions in right time. And then from a shareholder's perspective, how do we ensure that we meet the objectives of the shareholders, the reason why they have invested into our organization? So the stakeholder management, to my mind, is a key skill of any professional. How to manage different stakeholders, how to have difficult conversations, because it's not about you have to make everybody happy. Sometimes you would be in a scenario where you need to have difficult conversations as well. So how you can have those difficult conversations, how you can negotiate are the key parameters to my mind for us to be a successful professional. And what MNCs are looking at, be it any company in IT sector, banking sector, or consultancy sector, they are not looking at what qualifications you have got. Qualification, as I said, is just a baseline to get a step into the door. They are more looking for you, whether you are able to manage priorities. Are you able to reprioritize when required? Are you able to work under pressure? Are you able to handle conflicts? Are you able to have difficult conversations? Are you able to manage stakeholders? If you are able to do those, doesn't matter whether you are a company secretary or some other professional. Anyone working as a professional need to have these skills. Whether you are working in the organization or you are providing consultancy through the organization, you need to have these core skills. And how you can develop them, it will come over a period of time. You can't basically learn from the theoretical approach. But it is good that as a human being, as a social animal, we do have these skills inherently built into us. And we use them in day-to-day life as well. It's just a matter of harnessing them in your corporate environment. And if we do that, we would be successful. And other aspect is, yes, I'm not discounting the fact that qualification is not the key. Qualification is the key, because by having a particular qualification, help the person sitting on the table understand what rigor you have gone through to become a professional you are. And that's the reason why IIM, as an example, has got more success rate or placements than a normal MBA institute in some local area, because it depends upon your peer group as well, your networking and the cohort you work with. So everything gets counted. It's not one skill you can basically highlight over the other. It's a combination of everything. And it's basically how you can manage that situation to sell yourself that, yes, you are going to add value to the organization. Because when somebody is trying to hire you, they are hiring you for your skills, not for your qualifications. Qualification is just 10% of the process. 70% learning is done on the job. They can always teach you how to do a job, but they can't teach you how to set and adjust within a team environment, how to adapt. So adaptability is a key. And as I said earlier as well, change is the only constant these days. So there are a lot of emerging risks. So you have to update your knowledge and understanding and skills on an ongoing basis. So how resilient are you to upskill yourself? Because if I've read something today, it may not be applicable 2 months down the line. Then I should know, I don't want to read it. No, to sustain, you have to do that. So you need to understand the challenges and proactively manage those challenges and get yourself ready for that. So these are the few key skills to my mind. Any organization, be it MNC or local companies, would want to have it in you if they want to hire you, because they want to pay for the skills you bring. They are buying your skills. They can teach you the job. So job is not a problem. And that's where we need to change that mindset, that by studying X or by doing a certification, I would be able to get something. No, it's the skill set you bring on the table. That's what is material. I hope that answers the question. Over to you, Manish.
Yeah, very well said, Jogindraji. I mean, I can't probably agree more that, qualification is probably just 10% skill is, the rest of what you bring on the table, and organizations are hiring you obviously for your skill set. Yes, qualification is the entry gateway for you, and which is very important. But the kind of skill you develop is really even more important for somebody to hire you. I think I'll take the one question which is, again, have been posted by a couple of members on the chat on being the chairperson of the ICSI UK. Potentially, I can answer that question myself. So the question I'm getting is around, are we required to do the ICSA UK qualification in order to secure a job with UK? And how is, ICSI as a qualification being considered in UK? So just linking it to what Joginderji just said, I think the qualification is important, but as far as you have the ICSI qualification and you have the other skill set which organizations are looking for, you don't need to compulsorily have, the ICSA UK kind of qualification. Obviously, having to do that is an added advantage. And now we have a MOU between ICSA UK and ICSI, which enables you to do that, in a more efficient way. So you should obviously explore that also. Also on the question, how is the ICSI qualification treated or recognized externally? So UK NIRIC, which is the body who kind of gives the accreditation to all foreign educations, rates ICSI qualification as a master degree. So just, for everybody on the call to be aware of that. So yeah, long story short, I think as far as you have the skill set and you can demonstrate to the employer that you bring the skill set they are looking for, you don't need to have any XYZ specific qualification for UK. ICSI alone as a qualification should be good enough for you. But obviously with the MOU, it gives you opportunity to do the other qualification also with minimum efforts. So we'll leave it there. Now, quickly moving on to the next question, which is linked to, again, what we broadly just touched upon in terms of communication. That communication, again, is a wider theme. It comes back to how you influence people around you, how you negotiate some things with people around you, and how you learn from each other as well. Gopal, if I can come with that, question to you, that from your own experience, in last 8 to 9 years, how have you grown your communication skill, and potentially, again, not limited in that communication skill to language only, but what's your take on that? Like, how have you developed your communication, and how have you as a profession grown into some of the areas like, negotiating with people, influencing people, and managing teams, and, understanding people more than anything else?
Thanks, Manish. So as probably I alluded to in the initial part of the session, communication, I think, to a lot is successful or unsuccessful depending upon how which audience you're interacting with, right? So again, if I have to maybe reflect upon the past 8 to 9 years of experience, it's mostly been successful or unsuccessful depending upon the people in general. But I think if you look at it from managing people perspective, so again, what I think would be really helpful if you have to be a successful communicator is that you have to maybe start to listen, and maybe listen and maybe care to a certain extent about people as well. Because I think even though they are professionals who are working for you, they are still, as Yugendraji mentioned, human beings, right? So I think as I maybe alluded to earlier, if you're good with people, you're probably a very good communicator mostly. So I think one example that I would maybe circle back is, again, during COVID times, we saw people who have adapted to the changing environment. We were from an office environment, moved to a home working environment wherein people had other pressing priorities as well, around maybe homeschooling or around maybe, managing personal obligations as well. So I think if if I look at it and maybe correlate it back to communication per se, so I think if you give people flexibility around managing their workload in accordance with the other obligations that we have they have on the personal level, it kind of helps still land the same work, but still provides them the flexibility they need, for example, for that. And I think that is one way of communicating that message to people, saying that we kind of understand you are in a duress situation, you need that support from us. And that is again one way of communicating from the management side, that we are there to help in case you need help. And the organization as a whole is looking forward to looking to help you as much as possible in the current environment. So I think that's one example that comes to my mind on how we have switched gears in terms of communication from top to bottom, and how people to a certain extent have reciprocated as well in terms of still delivering whatever they need to deliver from a work perspective in the changing times.
Thank you for that, Gopal. Thank you for that. And, I mean, this is such an interesting question, and probably everybody has their own experiences to share in this regard. So, Arpit, if I can take your views also on the similar question, that from your experience, obviously leading a finance team for EasyDip, how have you learned in terms of communication, dealing with people, influencing people, negotiating with people, and what are some of the key takeaways anybody listening on the call can take from you on this topic?
Yeah, I think one important thing that I have learned over the years is you have to keep other person's point of view in mind. That makes you a successful communicator. So it's like you have to keep in mind that when the other person is communicating with you, there is some objective that other person also brings to the table. There is some thought process, there is some point of view that other person is also bringing to the table, and you have to respect that in your entire communication process. If you take note of this fact, then I think the communication is going to be effective and mutually beneficial for both the parties.
Okay. Thank you, Arpit. Very useful and very to the point advice, and something which I have experienced in my career as well. Another quick question I'm getting on the chat is obviously around the opportunities available for company secretaries. We keep talking about how MNCs can provide us jobs, but there would be and there should be a lot of opportunities out there in small and medium companies also for company secretaries. So Jogendraji, if I can come to you with this question, what do you think is the role of company secretary as a general counsel in small to medium companies, and what can we do to explore more or increase our roles more in small to medium organization and companies?
I think to act as general counsel, you need to have a legal qualification. That's my understanding. So if you have got legal qualification in addition to company secretary, then yes, you can act as company secretary as well as general counsel. But in terms of otherwise, like we act as an advisor to the board anyway, and in that we should be able to have influence over the management team, given management team would be looking up to a company secretary to understand what board needs and why. So you would be able to provide those insights from your relationship with the board to the management, and from management to the board. So acting that conduct, so you can act as that as advisor anyway. So, and it doesn't really matter whether it is a small industry or a large corporate environment. The best part is, if you are in a large corporate, you might be siloed into some aspects of the company secretarial work. But if it is a small to medium-sized company, then and that is the real way to learn various aspects of managing a company for its company secretary role or be it general counsel role. So it's the opportunity which you have to explore and leverage to your advantage. What you can bring on the table is the key. It doesn't really matter where you are, as long as you are putting in right efforts and are factoring what is expected of you and giving the optimal advice. you can't go theoretical in every scenario as well. We have to understand the perspective as Arpit suggested. If you just go theoretical and you don't understand the situation company is facing, then no one is going to listen to you. So you have to mold your, as I think it was articulated, you as an advisor have to act as an enabler of the business. You can't act as a roadblock. So if you act as a roadblock, no one is going to listen to you after some time. But if you are acting as an enabler, what that means is try to understand the perspective the person is coming from, try to understand the circumstances the organization is in. And based on that, you have to give your pragmatic advice as to this is what law says, this is where we are at. Maybe we can move to this step slowly if we do this. Or maybe other way would be, let us have communication with our regulators, let's have frank conversation with them that we want to do it, but we are facing this situation. How can we engage our stakeholders, including the regulators, to help them understand? And they will appreciate that. I think the corporate governance on the law is changing, where they want organizations or companies to grow, and they want to remove these license raj and the regulations which are unnecessary, basically. So to me, you need to aware of the situation you are in, and based on that, go about it. It doesn't really matter to my mind, based on my experience, whether you are working in a small organization or a large organization. But I do agree, if you are in a small organization, you can play a more broad role than a specialist role. Over to you, Manish.
That kind of makes perfect sense to me, and thanks for sharing your views on that, Javinderji. Arpit, I'm getting a follow-up questions on what you initially mentioned about the COVID scenario, and how the COVID scenario has actually changed the way that we work in future. So just probably if you can expand on that in your role in COVID scenario, what sort of challenges you saw on people front, how you dealt with them, and how potentially the members and students on call can learn from this. In the sense, at the end of the day, we are still working with people, whether in front of us or working remotely. How do we take care of their emotions and understand them a bit more further?
Yeah, definitely. It's like in that remote working environment, the people touch with the team was diluted to a great extent. And gradually, we had to work with HR team to put some systematic processes in place so that we are interacting with our teams even without any office work related agenda. So especially for junior resources in the team, it was a big challenge. Let's say someone who joined the organization, the first organization in his professional journey, and this is the kind of situation he is into. So it was really tough for such kind of team members to cope up with the challenges posed by COVID situation. And it always requires that extra amount of effort from the manager to make sure that you are taking that extra effort to reach out to your team members. When you are in the office, then even if you are not talking much, it's like through body language also you are communicating, and you get to know like what's going on in the team. But in a remote working environment, it becomes difficult. So you have to put that extra effort to reach out to your team members and listen to like what kind of challenges they are facing, and then find solutions for them. Over to you, Manish.
Yeah, thank you, Arpit, for this. Another follow-up question that I have, Joginderji, for you, based on what you initially mentioned, that we obviously act as an advisor to the board, and we have a very big role to play. How do we take care of the interest of the investor? So one of the questions I'm getting is more around to say that as a company secretaries, how can we ensure that the actions management and the board is taking is not mismatched to the will of the ultimate stakeholder? Like how can we act as to bridge the gap between shareholders' expectations and the action the board and the management is taking in day to day?
Yeah, sure. So to my mind, I think it is the transparency and of communication with your stakeholders, be it your shareholders or your board. Company secretary in their role should and act as the management or the board. And if they do so, they would be able to help the management understand why it is critical to be transparent about the strategy or the decisions we are making and how they are going to impact the organization, and how we are basically driving the board, because board of directors are also fiduciary liable, as an example. So you are an officer of the company, so you have to perform your role independently, and if you do so, you would be able to balance the interests of the stakeholders, irrespective of whether they are the management or the shareholders or the board. Over to you, Manish.
Yeah, thank you for that. Another questions that I'm getting, from multiple people actually is around we talked about there is a lot of information out there online. We talked about we can learn things through online platforms. Is there any suggestion or list of topics or any tools that this panel can suggest, which is useful, or which is useful for you now, or which has been useful for you in your career journey so far? And I'll potentially come to each of you for some of the takeaways, like what you like to read in your free time online, which can add to the knowledge, whether it's about compliance and governance, and generally being aware about what's going in the world. So Gopal, if I can start with you, like in your free time, out of everything available online, where do you go to read stuff, and what is your strategy to keep yourself up to date?
Sure. So I think I'm a big fan of podcasts. I'm not sure how many of you listen to it, but I think definitely that is one thing that I start my day with. I personally follow the podcast from BBC Business Report, which is, I think, a very short 20-minute podcast, but kind of covers what is happening around the world very briefly, in a very well manner. So I think that is something that I would strongly suggest if you're in general interested in news. And would like to understand from a world perspective what is happening, what are the key things that you would like to know from the past day which has happened. So that is one thing I would suggest. If you have any specific topics that you would be interested in, I would maybe suggest, I personally follow Financial Times, and the one thing that they do very well is that they cover particular topics that you would be liking to receiving news on. So you might be interested in politics, you might be interested in maybe following what the latest is on governance, or maybe what's happening in the world in general. So you could pick and choose the topics that you would like to maybe get news on, and they provide customized news alerts around that. So I think those are the two key things I would probably suggest, which is again available online, available readily to people, but again to a certain extent customizable as well according to the personal needs of people. So that's my key takeaway.
That's very useful indeed. I mean, I have recently started following podcasts myself and find them extremely useful. So thanks for suggesting it. Arpit, if I can take a couple of points from you on this for the audience as well, please.
Yeah, the two sources that I depend upon to keep myself updated. The first one is subscription of ET Prime. So there also, just like Gopal mentioned, you have the option of specifying the keywords, and you can keep on getting notifications, and then you can read the articles of your interest. The other portal that I follow is the KEN, KEN. It's a paid portal, and they come up with very interesting and in-depth analysis of one topic every week. And that really helps me in keeping me up to date regarding what's happening in the business industry in general.
Thank you, Arpit. Quite useful, Jogendra. If I can take some takeaways from you also on that for the audience.
Yeah. So I would say there is no one size fit all approach for this. It just depends on your interest. So like when I was a student and in early days of my career, I used to rely upon our Chartered Secretaries newsletter, because that gives a comprehensive view of what is happening in and around us, which may impact us. And what that does is that gives you a trigger. So if you find some area of interest, then you can go in depth and find more resources to look for that. Currently, I basically am subscribing to various newsletters produced by law firms, various newsletters produced by big law firms and consultancy firms. And dependent upon the area of interest, they basically observe what's happening around us, and they provide that summarized view. And that helps me understand what's happening. And then if it is specific to my role, my business, then I go into more detailed resources dependent upon that. So it's about knowing where you are, what you need. And I would still feel that chartered secretaries could be a good starting point for our members and students in India. And then in addition to that, if they have the option to get subscriptions to any of the big consultancy firms' newsletters on their topics of interest, that's another way of learning about what's happening around you. And as both Arpit and Gopal, be aware of what's happening. So follow the news. That's the best trigger, basically. You have to keep yourself up to date, because then only you would be able to provide right advice or pragmatic advice to your management or to your board as part of your role. Thank you.
That's quite indeed helpful. I personally probably will share a couple of points here from my own experience also. Like, I am probably a mix of a traditional and a modern approach when it comes to keeping myself updated. So I still like to read, newspaper, listen to a good news summary on TV, and I found that that is very useful for me to keep updated in terms of what's going around me and around in the world. Another thing which is really helpful for me is to kind of get the notification and daily updates, whether it is the daily update or notification I get from LinkedIn about the financial news, whether it is the daily update or notification that I get from a Bloomberg app on my mobile. I think I find those sort of mailers and notification really, really useful for me, and something I would suggest others also to leverage of. In addition to that, for the audience on the call, you should also be aware that there are daily ICSI info capsule mailer, which covers the legal update for people and audience out there in India. You can subscribe to that sort of notification by going into ICSI website as well. So that again, is a very useful tool for you to be keeping yourself up to date. Another quick question, just picking up from the chat, is around the data protection and governance and compliance related to data protection. If I can come with that theme to you, Joginderji, I mean, obviously COVID-19, what it means is more and more people working from remote locations, not only nationally, internationally. That means the information will again be shared across different jurisdictions and far more than it was shared in the past. And obviously that poses a question around the data protection and security around that, which I think will become a very broad field going into next few years. Again, how you feel company secretaries can play a role there? Do you see an opportunity for us there, and what can we do to grab that opportunity?
I definitely see there is a role for us to play. Again, I would go back to my traditional or customer issue that we are advisors of the board. We should not restrict us to one area of expertise. We are a general advisor to the board, and data protection is a key emerging risk from India perspective. I'm not sure how advanced now we are. I'm not following much from an Indian privacy risk perspective, but in European jurisdiction, Western countries, it has become mandated, especially when your company is subsidiaries or holding company or a multinational company, because global data protection regulations apply from European jurisdiction if there is any touch point of your client or your company. And it is a key aspect for us to understand why data protection is important. Because in today's day and age, everything is digitized. What that means is our emails, our passwords are floating around, and if you don't have right security and encryption in place, we have the risk of losing that information, and that can be used against us. And that could lead to financial loss, that could lead to social character assassination as well, and blackmailing and things like that as well. So data protection is really a very good area for us to be aware of and helping our board understand. And I think the key aspect which is also emerging, especially I think in India, would be how do we get the consent of the people before we get their data or their information? Because it was not there in the past. It's emerging in India. It's a bit mature and advanced in Western countries, where you can't really use an information of a person, so personal information, unless and until you have given them your disclosures, how you are going to handle that information, how you are going to keep that information secure, with whom you are going to share that information. And you can't simply like float it around openly. You have to have proper systems in place, proper controls in place before you share that information with third parties. And if you don't have the consent, you can be penalized for that. So data risk or data protection regulations is really a good area where we can really help our boards and the management and can enter into a new area of expertise. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And indeed, again, another new emerging kind of area is data protection laws. And to, Joginderji's point, I think, we have a very big journey to make there, most particularly in India and even outside India. A lot of other countries are still getting up to speed or building their governance framework around it. So I personally see that as a huge opportunity for us as a company secretary professional, and a lot to do there, as we move into next 5 to 10 years. Another theme of questions that I'm getting here is more.
Sorry, I would also add one thing. As a company secretary, we are a custodian of the records of the company as well. And records are also a part of data. So data is a very broadly used or loosely used term. All our records which we have to maintain are also part of the data risk anyway. So we are indirectly performing that role. It's just having a better awareness of what those new regulations are or potentially going to be, because what I've noticed is all such things are discussed at like global level in forums like World Economic Forum or at UN or Global Trade Organization, and then the nations follow to comply with those requirements as part of their agreements. So now it has gone into Europe. Sooner or later, it's going to become mandatory from an Indian perspective as well. And maybe as a company secretary, or even our institute can bring some aspects of that into the curriculum for the members and as part of the development, and for the student as part of their course curriculum to help them understand the basic aspects of data risk management. And that could be a good way for them to go into the direction. Sorry to cut you off. Over to you.
No problem at all. And rightly added, to be honest, that data is obviously a very loosely used term, and it's more about the awareness of new laws, because we are already playing a pivotal role in ensuring the data protection and governance of CS. So thanks for adding that. Another theme of questions that I'm getting now is more around what are the role for CS in broader finance and accounting. And if I can come with that question to both of you, Arpit and Gopal, from your experience, not only from all your personal experience looking at the people around you, the people in your team, what do you think are the role for company secretaries in broader finance, not limiting only to accounting? So Arpit, if we can start with you there.
Manish, can you elaborate a bit more on the question? It's like a role for CS professionals in finance, not related to accounting in particular.
Including accounting. So can CS play a role in broader finance? The question I got was more on accounting. I'm just saying that, obviously CS is not limited to accounting. They can do more broad things in finance. Yeah.
So one thing I will tell you from my personal experience, that right from my first job, the commercial contracting is one area where I have played a very good role in all my organizations. Commercial contracting, coming from CS background, you have a good understanding of laws. And if you combine that understanding with the business dynamics, then you can assist your legal team in drafting commercial contract, which serves the organization interest in a much, much better way. Typically, you will see that lawyers doesn't have that kind of in-depth understanding of business. And they reach out to people in the finance team to strike a balance between what business is asking and what we should be doing to protect the interest of the organization. So I think this is one area where a CS kind of a skill set definitely can add value to the entire organization.
That's very well said, and I can probably relate to that. It's part of my own experience as well, that having a CS and working in a broader finance role does give me added advantage because I can understand the legal terms and knowledge or language as well. And equally, I can understand the commercial side of the business as well. Gopal, if you would like to add anything to that based on your experience also, like in broader finance, what do you see the role for CS or added advantages CS can bring in?
Sure. So I think probably I'll share a personal example that I have kind of encountered during my professional journey. So I think one of the things that has really helped me in my role as a financial accountant back in the days was that I was involved in the liquidation of some companies, and given that I had a company secretary, qualification as well, it really helped me understand how in general the life cycle of the company works, as Yogendraji mentioned in his answers as well, that you are involved in the start of the company and you're involved when it ends as well. So I think that way, when you're reading legal contracts around liquidation, you are able to maybe appreciate or understand the terminologies a lot better because you have that kind of experience of how the law is written and interpreted. So I think on those fronts, a CS can definitely contribute a lot better in terms of the broader finance roles as well. And as Arpit rightly mentioned, you kind of work in partnership with the legal team. You work in partnership as from the accounting team on how you close around the books from a liquidation perspective, how the distribution happens, post the liquidation happens if it's a subsidiary. So all those elements that are there, all those legal intricacies which are there, you're able to understand a lot better as a company secretary. So I think if you look at it from a finance role perspective, there is definitely food on the table available for company secretaries. It's just you have to maybe build an appetite for it as you progress through your professional journey. Over to you, Manish.
Thank you, Gopal, for the insights on that. Another quick question, and again, a new theme we haven't touched upon this so far in the session is around the corporate governance audit. There is obviously an increased role of corporate governance professional in performing corporate governance audit. Jogendraji, if I can take your views on that, like how essentially company secretary play a role in strengthening the corporate governance audit for various organizations, or again, any broader thought on that in terms of how can we explore that opportunity more in the corporate governance audit sector?
Yeah, as I said, so corporate governance is all about having transparency and complying with the requirements applicable to the business activities. And as a company secretary, we are skilled for that. We understand what are the various facets of different laws applicable to the business activity when we are working in that organization. And we can really be handy to the management to facilitate that corporate governance audit, to tick the boxes or to ensure or demonstrate how we are complying with the requirements to pass the test. So corporate governance audit is just the name, but as a company secretary, we are, to my mind, eyes and ear of the organization because we understand where the organization is working, what are the pitfalls, and it's always good to be proactively managing those aspects with, even if it is through the external auditor as well. You can help them understand, look, yes, we understand these are the deficiencies or these are the gaps, but these are the steps we are taking to remediate these gaps. And they'll appreciate that. Rather than them finding it out, it's good to be proactive and helping them understand as well. If you are working in the organization and if you are basically working as a corporate governance auditor externally, then you basically need to understand, first you need to know what the type of industry or company you are going to audit, what are their activities, what is the size and complexity related to that business, and who is the best person to help you understand with the relevant information to help you make your decision to fail or pass, or what information would you need. So as a company secretary, we do have an advantage performing that role, especially with our other professional colleagues, because we know the law, we are informed about, or we are given some basic understanding of financial management, accounting as well. We are given a basic understanding of HR aspects as well as part of our curriculum. And we are given some practical understanding as part of our secretarial audit aspects as well. So we can leverage that information to perform that corporate governance audit.
Yeah, thank you for that. And you obviously keep rightly bringing on the topic around it's all about transparency, and that's where we have a lot of role to play as company secretaries to make sure what we are advising to board is to increase the transparency across the company. I'm just nearing to the end of our session, but I'm just gonna pick up probably two more questions before we end here. So one question is around again very generic theme. The question is around is it is it is it good to have expertise in a specific area and grow your career just into one area and be seen as as a subject matter expert, or is it rather better to probably know about various bits and bobs across finance, accounting, governance? Like, what is more beneficial? Is specialization good or bad, or it could be anything? And again, it's more a generic question, but Arpit, if I can come to you with that, like, what is your view on that? And I'll probably share my views also on this, personally from my own experience. So I'll start with you, Arpit.
Yeah, I think it's a matter of personal choice. If you enjoy being expert in just one field and being a super expert, or whether you like dealing with a large team and managing a much bigger role in the organization. It's a choice between these two different aspects. Okay. If you ask me personally, if you know a good amount of insight, if you know have reasonably good knowledge about multiple facets of the compliance and finance domain, then you are in a much better position to move up in the hierarchy of any organization at a much faster pace. So I will prefer a generalist kind of role than a specialist kind of role.
Okay, no, that's very well said, and I can't probably agree more to it from my personal experience also, that it is more a matter of choice. It is where you see opportunity and where you think you will be good. I know, in my network, people who are into a very, very niche profile, whether it's a compliance or governance, whether it is about legal matters with respect to a particular law or, with particular jurisdiction. And they have been growing very fast because there are not so many people out there who understand those laws or can advise you on those matters. So being specialized into those fields can pay you a lot, both in terms of personal and professional growth. Equally, I also know a lot of people in my network who have grown significantly up in the ladder of the organization because they knew about all other areas. They were able to quickly shift from one profile to another profile, do well in that, and then move on from there on. So it's a matter of choice for the audience on the call who's asking this question. It's a matter of choice. I think personally, I have also been more benefited by being generalist, in the sense being more aware of the broader finance, corporate, and governance rather than limiting to it. But I find it a mix of both. So, for example, when I initially started into, say, a particular profile, I got into that profile because I knew a lot about what going in the finance overall. But once I got into that profile, for next 3 years, my target was to be an SME in what I'm doing. So in reality, you potentially can see that as a mix as well. You should be aware of what going around you, in broader accounting, compliance, and governance area. But equally, when you are into a profile, you should always aim to be the expert or subject matter expert in that area. If somebody in your department has a question, they should look at you for that question. If somebody in your management has a question, they should look at you to answer that question. So I think that's how I have personally taken this approach, that yes, you should know about multiple things, but equally be an expert in your own area, whichever profile you are working on. Doesn't mean you should stop listening or knowing about other fields. You should, but equally, pay attention to what your core role is and be an expert in that. That pretty much brings me to the end of the questions that I wanted to tag. I think couple of quick announcement or request to make from my side, and then I'll quickly go to all the panelists if they have any closing comments. So one, obviously it is phenomenal, as I said initially also, that ICSI in last 4 years have set up 6 overseas centers. And just to remind everybody here that ICSI as a education and qualification have also been now recognized by the by the company of the Malaysian Association of Company Secretary, whether within India also it has been recognized by UGC, which is University Grants Commission, and we have been accredited equivalent to a master's degree. So that accreditation should also help us to, get into different roles and different qualification and increase our tie-up with other overseas centers. A request that I will make to all the members who are on this call from, jurisdiction outside India. If you haven't already done so, please update your address, in your in your database in CS Institute, so that we get to know that yes, there are more people out there of our of our institute in various locations, and we can get in touch with you. So make sure, if you haven't updated your professional address, which is outside India, and in the in your official database, you do that. Make sure your membership is kept active, by ensuring your payment and fees is up to date, and that will simply help us to connect with you more going into future. Another last thing to mention from my side, as CS Ashish mentioned at the start of the session, we are organizing the first international conference in Dubai on 23rd March 2022. So obviously, request all the members to register for that, and obviously make that a successful event. That is our first international an international seminar, and looking forward to that. That's kind of pretty much from it. If I can come to each one of the panel members for any closing comments, and again, thanking from my side to all of you for being here. Jogendraji, any closing comment from you?
I will just say to the students on the call just that go for your passion. The world is out there for you to explore. Just have faith in yourself. And there are a lot of opportunities out there. It's just a matter of how you are able to grab those. Yes, it may be hard yards you have to go through, but you'll get there. So just have patience. Institute has given us all the skills we need to be a successful professional. And to the members, again, same thing for you. You have been in the industry or in the profession for some time now. You would have realized that the skills which we have got as a student with the institute are really helpful for us to be successful in our roles, wherever we are, whether we are in practice or in employment, in finance, in risk, in compliance, in company secretary, and all the best to you. Thank you.
Thank you for all your thoughts and views during the session today. Very much insightful for me personally, Jogendraji, and I'm pretty sure the audience would have benefited from that also. Thank you so much. Gopal, if I come to you for any closing comments, suggestions from your side to the audience on the call.
Thanks, Manish. So I would completely echo what Jogendraji mentioned. I think it's important that you have faith in the system and continue to pursue the passion that you have set yourself out for. I think it's important as a student that you kind of don't give up. So I think I personally would maybe say that professional courses like CS or any other professional courses that you're pursuing at times can get tough, but I think it's important that you believe in yourself. And definitely if you kind of set out with the right attitude, you will excel in the world is probably my key takeaway. I would also like to maybe thank CS Institute in general for this opportunity, for maybe allowing us to provide our insights on how we maybe see things. And it's been quite an enriching session for me personally as well. So I'm quite happy that we were provided this platform wherein we could come and share our thoughts. So thanks, Manish, and over to you.
Okay. Thank you, Gopal, for your time today. And again, thanks for sharing your journey. Very, very insightful. Arpit, if I can come to you, any closing comments from your side?
Yeah, so as we discussed on this panel, it's like the opportunities for CS professionals are expanding day by day. And when I was pursuing CS, few of my peers used to complain that there are not many opportunities for people like us once we qualify. So it is very heartening to see that Institute is taking steps to open up the opportunities for international placement for the members of the Institute. So I really hope that this journey meets with astounding success. And thank you so much for providing me this opportunity to be on this platform and share my views.
Thank you, Arpit, for your time and all these views. And as you rightly said, I think we have set ourselves on a very remarkable journey. I know I'm repeating myself that, 6 overseas center in 4 years is phenomenal. And, we are to go, strength to strength from here on. I think I'll just end the session. Last thing I want to call out is if anybody wants to know more about the CGI courses related questions, or you want to have, more follow-up questions on that, please reach out to ICSI International Affairs Department. You can reach out there on the email by writing to sonu.lakhani@icsi.edu. I'll just repeat that email ID for everybody, sonu.lakhani@icsi.edu. Thank you so much from my side to all the panelists and for everybody who has attended the call. It's been a pleasure and proud for me, as I said, to be hosting this session, and looking forward to, be part of these sessions, and looking forward to the international conference that we have in the March in Dubai. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Manish. Thanks, everyone.